Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is brought to you by Genesis House and the Friends in Recovery community, a thriving network of individuals who are fighting back against the stigma of addiction and recovery. Join your hosts, Mike the Podfather and Jersey Ed, as they break the silence and speak up about the real issues of addiction, treatment, and recovery. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your Friends in Recovery.
Hey, welcome everybody, friendsandrecoverypodcast.com. I am Mike Miles, the Podfather.
And I'm Jersey Ed.
Yes, and we're here to help everybody hopefully get sober and fight this epidemic of addiction. And boy, there's a lot going on out there, Ed.
Yeah, absolutely. Get sober. I like that. I like getting people sober.
You do?
And I like staying sober because that keeps me sober, getting people sober.
Well, I guess being a power of example by staying sober a day at a time, it's a good thing, you know?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
A good thing.
Absolutely.
And we all know the progression of this disease can sneak up anytime.
And kill us.
That's right.
Fuck us up.
That's right. And I really believe that, you know, if you really want to get sober, no matter how bad your life is, we've all been there.
Yeah,
bills get paid eventually. Don't worry about it. Take care of yourself, you know.
Yeah. Nobody cares. Work harder.
That's right. Nobody cares. Work harder.
That's right. That's it.
That was said by a somebody with some real knowledge in philosophy.
Somebody in this room, maybe, right?
Was it? Was it Sweets?
It might have been Sweets.
It was
What's up,
Sweets.
Sweets?
Is that his motto?
That is his motto.
Nobody cares. Work harder.
That's right. That's right. I heard a good saying the other day on one of the podcasts. They said, "I'm fucked up from the floor up."
Very nice.
And that's true, man. I am. It doesn't just affect the brain, man. It affects everything when you're not in the right space.
You know, I used my Waze to get here today, and it always takes me on the most convenient way with the least amount of traffic. And I noticed I used to fight Waze. I used to say, no, this thing is wrong, and I'm going my own way, and I'd be in traffic. So it was 44 minutes, it said. I thought, Jesus, which way are we going today? And what a great ride I had coming here. I came through Boxford, all the way up through Raleigh, Boxford, up the back way up to Ipswich, Danvers over here. All back roads. It took me 46 minutes.
So you were open to suggestion, and you had a great
experience.
experience.
I sat back and let the Waze do its thing.
Wow, and you kind of applied the program to Waze.
I always want to be in control.
That's it.
Sometimes you just got to relinquish that control.
Well, what's this? How it works? Isn't it in the big book?
Yeah.
We want to be the director, the producer,
right.
the everything, and that's when it gets fucked up from the floor up, and you know, it's not a good thing. You know,
I used to sit in those AA meetings and read those little corny signs, live and let live. I thought it said live and let live, and I thought, who wrote this, and but there was one, it said let go and let God, and I was like, I don't know about that,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if I believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, when you do just let go sometimes, let go, just let it go, let it be, and just participate.
Yeah.
I find that that's the best way for me.
Yes, and that's yeah, absolutely. You just it's too much thinking and too much work when you try to fucking be that person in the big book. The producer, the director. It just gets way too much, and then you can't focus on your life and can't understand what's going on and why you're in this position you're in. If you didn't do what you were doing and tell everybody to be like you, like me, and not you, but everybody wants to be like Sweets, I guess. But
tall and handsome, yes, that's right.
Tall and handsome,
right.
yes.
Instead of short, fat, and gruesome.
But no, that's it's just a good life being sober. But real quick, I want to take care of some business here. And we do have a guest. There's just a lovely lady sitting to my right of me, and we'll get to her in a minute. Hold on, I got to get my glasses on. I can't see anymore. We want to thank Genesis House for the lovely studio.
Absolutely.
Supporting us here. This keeps us going. Genesis House is a wonderful sponsor of ours and gets us through these shows. In addition to Friends in Recovery podcast, we hold the community events around the country. We have a few right now going on in Voorhees, New Jersey, and Palm Springs, Florida. They are a monthly meeting. Coming soon, Lowell, Massachusetts, with your buddy Mike.
Bob Cox.
Bob Cox is he's also a alumni and been on several of our shows already. Check out some of the past shows. That's Lowell, Massachusetts, and Newtown, Connecticut, starting in January, both of them. And don't forget, we are powered by your likes, follows, subscribes, and shares. It's so important you get it out there. Share it. Get the word out to everybody. Let everybody know what we're doing, and the follows and subscribes helps keep this going. Along with Genesis House keeping us afloat money wise, the shares get the word out. So follow us on social media and leave a review. Leaving a review helps too. That gets a 5-star review. Give us a 5-star review. Scroll down to the end of that the show, and you'll see the reviews. Leave a 5-star review, and remember, always looking for speakers to share their stories. Even if you're a professional, if you're an alumni, whatever you are, we want you to come in here. We want you to talk. However you get, wherever you're at, Alaska, Canada, wherever, we want you to get on the show and really kind of convey your message to our listeners out there. And we do have a lot of listeners. So
do we have people in Alaska listen to us?
I don't know. We'll have to check our stats.
Okay.
Sweets does that.
Right.
Would you check on that?
No,
stats?
I'll check.
All right,
check.
Good. Yeah,
I'm sure they're listening.
they listen to us everywhere. So, and I think Maureen Cavanagh, right?
Yeah.
Cavanagh,
Yeah, I think she kind of heard of us out there in the interweb, and she called us. No, I'm just kidding.
So we have Maureen Cavanagh with us today. Maureen is, what an incredible woman here. She's an author. She's a mother. She's the president of Magnolia Recovery and Counseling Services. Is that correct?
Consulting, yeah.
Consulting,
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right, consulting. Maybe I need glasses.
And she doesn't smoke cigars.
I don't, yeah. Well, I do now.
Yeah, she does
today.
now. Yes.
She's a very attractive woman, and she's sporting a huge diamond ring. It's
I am.
blinding me right now.
Blinding me.
But it's a lovely ring.
Congratulations on your engagement.
Thank you very much.
So
Thank you very much.
Maureen, tell us a little bit about yourself, or a lot about yourself.
Yeah, this is not something I ever expected to do. I was a special education teacher. I come from a family full of addiction. I was actually taken away from my parents when I was in my teens because of the drug and alcohol use in the house. So the thought of going into this field or working in this field was just, like, so off the table. I can't even begin to tell you. It wasn't even like a possibility. As a matter of fact, I moved far enough away that I mistakenly thought I was never going to have to deal with any of this, right? And we all know that, addiction is 50% genetic. And I had 4 children, and unfortunately, one of them became addicted to heroin. So I was thrust back into this whole life of dealing with somebody with a substance use disorder. And I, kind of acted like a maniac, like a lot of parents, a lot of mothers do. But I think I was probably the queen of all maniacs because it was worthy of a book. And, it's like everybody's crazy, but the super, super crazy one gets a book. And my book is called If You Love Me, A Mother's Journey Through Her Daughter's Opioid Addiction, which is, the paperback is coming out in January, and they renamed the subtitle to be A Mother's Journey Through Her Daughter's Addiction and Recovery.
So you're here to hawk your book, is that what it is?
A little, always,
Absolutely.
A little.
And it's a great book. It is a great book.
Mike Sweets
Of
actually
the
read it.
Of the very few books that I've read, I read Maureen's book,
Well,
and it was amazing.
Tormented him until he read it, but he did read
Well,
it.
Sweet, you know how to read?
Just that book.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, and your book, I'm sure.
I didn't read it.
Oh, you didn't read your book?
I didn't read my book.
I still haven't read my book. But the reason I wrote the book is because I knew when I was going through this, there were so many people that were going through the same thing. Of course, in the beginning, I thought it was just me. I knew logically it wasn't just me, but you feel like it's just you. And I found it very hard to find information or connect with anybody else that was going through this, and it made it really hard because just like with addiction, isolation is the worst thing for anybody. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to reach out. People said, "Oh, reach out and get help, talk to people." And it's like, "Oh, there's nobody to reach out to." Right. And this is a while ago, and things have gotten better. But in this desperate effort to help my own daughter, I connected with people, I researched things, and I saw a lot of gaps. And one of the gaps I saw was that there was no way to connect. Mm-hmm. So I created an organization called Magnolia New Beginnings, which is a nonprofit. And there's 2 things that Magnolia New Beginnings does. One of them is a support network for people that are have a family member or loved one that's struggling with addiction, and they're trying to be their support person. So we have about 25,000 members now in that group. They're online, and if anybody goes to magnolianewbeginnings.org, they can find the list of all the different kinds of support groups we have.
Super. Wow.
We have about 11,000 separate groups with about 11,000 members in recovery.
Wow.
And they're heavily monitored. We don't want anybody selling anything or doing anything shady in any of the groups. So we've been really careful with that. Lots of information and lots of ability to connect with other people that are going through the same thing.
And how is your daughter doing now?
My daughter is the most amazing person in the entire world. She's awesome. She's got about 2.5 years, and this is kind of the person that nobody really thought was going to make it.
Right.
She was in over 40 treatment centers. She
Good Lord.
let's say she overdosed 13 times to the point of death that she went to the hospital, and probably another 20 times that she was Narcan. And it was awful, and we all went through this same awful roller coaster. But she certainly is my hero, because anybody that can overcome that is just the bravest person in the whole world. So.
I love the title. Talk about the title. There's got to be something behind that.
Well, there is actually. The title is "If You Love Me," because one night she came home after another reoccurrence or another relapse, and was sitting on some beautiful, fabulous, sober friends brought her home at 3 o'clock in the morning. They went looking for her and finally found her, and brought her home at 3 o'clock in the morning. She had been doing really well too, and she was sitting on my kitchen floor, and she was just destroyed, because she was doing really well. She had this great support system. She had plans, and it was all falling apart again. And I looked down at her and I told her 2 things she already knew. And I said, "Honey, Katie, I love you so much, and you're going to die." And she looked back up at me and she said, "If you loved me, you'd let me die." And
God.
That's where the title of the book came from. But that's also when I thought I understood, but that's when I really understood.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can't. I mean, nobody can feel what another person feels, and when it's your child, it's as close as possible. That you think you can, but I realized that I couldn't, and I didn't, and that really I also realized that the only one I could really have any impact on was me.
Well, Mike and I can definitely identify with that, Maureen, because we have kids that are in recovery also, and they're doing well too. And I like how you I don't know if it's like it, but I like how you describe it. It's a roller coaster, and life with an addict is a roller coaster. It's insane. It goes up and down. When they want something, they're very happy and very very good with manipulating us and getting what we want and or getting what they want. And then the roller coaster hits, and next thing you know, they're ODing or they're running somewhere and you can't find them, and your life is non-stop roller coaster. You get those ups and downs, and at some point, I didn't even want to know about what was going on with my daughter. Is that kind of how you were at a point?
I guess towards the end, I started to realize what I could do, what I couldn't do, and that being so enmeshed in everything she was doing was not healthy for either one of us. But it was years of not feeling that way at all. Really wanting to just kind of climb inside her skin and do this for her, and that was really not healthy. It wasn't. It certainly wasn't healthy for me, but it wasn't productive for her either.
Yeah.
And in the book, you can see the progression of that. So you see me kind of, going from being this maniac where the book opens up with me going after somebody with a baseball bat, which I know that
Irish girls.
I know.
I love you.
It's funny. So her dad is a correction officer, and I'm in the car and I'm talking to him as I'm driving to go kill this person with a baseball bat that we both wanted to kill. And I had decided it was very, somebody was talking to me the other day about when you have a craving and you just go out and you relapse again and you don't even know what happened, and you're like, it's almost like it's over, and then you're like, oh my God, what did I do? it was the same kind of feeling. It was like, I know what I need to do. I need to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like the perfectly reasonable thing to do.
A judge is going to believe it. Everybody's going to understand it.
Nobody's going to put me in jail. I'm going to be on the cover of Time magazine.
Yeah, right, with the baseball bat.
So, but it wasn't even like like a real thought process. It was just this thing that I was all of a sudden found myself doing. And I'm driving there, and I'm talking to my ex, who's a correction officer and who's from Ireland, and I'm, in retrospect, I think he really probably should have said, Maureen, what are you doing? But instead he said, don't get caught.
Yeah. Oh, I like this guy.
So this is actually, the book is really very funny, because if I didn't have a sense of humor, and if my daughter didn't have a sense of humor, we would have never made it. But I thought it was perfectly reasonable for the majority of this to be totally like in everything that she was doing, and I thought that I could save her, and that I was the answer to everything, that I was going to help her, and oh God. But so it took a lot of pain to get to the point where I realized that that's not how it was going to happen, that she was going to have to do this herself, unfortunately. As much as I wanted to do it for her, I didn't want her to have to feel any of this.
Well, Friends in Recovery podcast, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, and talking to Maureen Cavanagh, and we'll be back.
Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. At Genesis House, they focus on treating the underlying causes of addiction. Their comprehensive approach includes psychiatric care, individual and small group therapy, trauma healing techniques, and holistic care including yoga, massage, and animal-assisted therapy. After treatment, their clients enjoy the lifelong support of a nationwide network of Genesis House alumni. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. friendsinrecoverypodcast.com. We're here with, I am the Podfather. I need to say that.
Yes, you are.
And I'm sitting here with Jersey Ed.
That's me. Hello, everybody.
And the lovely Maureen Cavanagh.
Absolutely.
And
Mike, one thing I forgot to do, Maureen, I just want to take a quick second here to give our podcast pick of the week. You guys should have flagged me down. I forgot to say it. I get emails saying, "Oh, give me another podcast. Give me another podcast." Well, listen, Friends in Recovery. What the fuck, man? Come on, this is the show. But I'll give you another podcast pick of the week. So let me put my glasses on. It's called Recovered Podcast. The host is Mark S. It's a podcast where life is seen through AA point of view, which is pretty cool. This guy kind of just takes you through situations and information on life through an AA point of view. This is the impressive part. This show has been on since 2007, and there's over 1,000 episodes now. So they're doing something right. I mean, I think are we near 1,000 episodes?
We're getting close.
Yeah, we are, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Right near Joe Rogan, around 1,300 episodes.
Exactly. So, but that's our podcast pick of the week. I forgot to say it at the beginning of the show, but it's called Recovered Podcast, and find it on any of your favorite podcast catchers. And,
Recovered with a D, Ed?
D, yeah. Like
Jersey Ed?
Recovered, like Jersey Ed. Okay. Very good. And now sorry, Maureen, I stole some of your time away.
No, that's quite all right.
But I'm going to get an email if I didn't put one of our podcast picks of the week. No.
So Maureen, we were talking. You had me captivated with. You had a baseball bat, and you were going to kill the guy that was harming your daughter. So let's pick that up where we were,
Sure.
and also could you just talk a little bit about enabling? Because I know there's a lot of mothers and wives and daughters and sons and brothers out there listening.
And people always think that was her, that was her dealer, or that was, but it wasn't. It was somebody who was a very sick individual who enjoyed Narcanning her and getting her to the point where she would die. He would buy drugs for her. He kept her at his house. He hid her from us, and then he would text me after he Narcanned her and told me that I should be very grateful that he Narcanned her, because meanwhile he's buying her the drugs. But I should be very grateful, and I should really be thanking him. Right. And I would block his number, and he would change his number, and he was just a sick man. And He's no longer with us.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Oh well.
And I didn't kill him.
Are you sure?
Well, nobody saw me anyhow.
You took the advice from the ex. I like that.
Oh God. Well, you know, people like that. There's a special place in hell for people like
Yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah. No.
Maybe he's there now.
Yeah,
No, I know.
exactly.
Well, I promised him I was going to dance on his grave, and I can't find it. So, and I don't like to lie. So I've
There's
got
this thing called the internet.
Yeah, oh, trust me,
You'll
the day
find
will
it.
come. I will find it.
I was talking to a corrections officer the other day, and he said that there's people like just like you're talking. They're predators. That's what they are.
Yeah, that's what he was, yeah.
They love preying on these people who are weak and vulnerable. And it was just a long story that him and I had a long conversation him and I had, and he was describing this person, and those people don't do well in jail, from what he was saying. And the corrections officer, and if your husband is a corrections officer, he probably turns his head too. Those people get treated the way they need to be treated when they get caught and thrown in jail. So
Just on that point, there was a gentleman that murdered 2 doctors in Boston.
I saw that. Yeah.
Right, and he got sentenced. And he had the audacity and the hatred in his heart to turn to the family of one of the doctors and say, do you want to know what your son's last words were? And all I could think of is, what? He has no idea what he's about to face when he goes to jail.
No.
I don't think he's going to be around long. I think people will be dancing on his grave. So,
Yeah.
So Maureen,
There's
how
some sick people out
yeah,
there.
there is. It's
talk about enabling. As a father, I've been down this road. I'm a recovering addict myself. I think I enabled myself. I lived alone. I had some issues and stuff, but as a father, I know I enabled. God, I enabled. But talk on that, would you please?
I don't know. I don't know if I enabled so much as I was totally and completely enmeshed. So I had really good physical boundaries, but I had no emotional boundaries. So everything she did, we both went through it. Like, you know what I mean? She'd call me and I'd jump, and I did things like that.
Right.
Didn't give her any money. She didn't live in my house while she was using drugs. That was one of my boundaries. I thought I was doing good,
Right.
but I really wasn't, because I was like my whole life was taken over by her addiction. And so I did a lot of the things that a lot of the things that we're told aren't good. I didn't do, and I did a lot of the right things, but I did the wrong thing by myself, and then in turn by becoming so enmeshed in her entire life and thinking that I was somehow the answer to this, when everybody, people are the answer to their own problems.
Yeah. But there's no handbook to, first of all, parenting.
Right.
When we have a kid, I was 23 years old when I had my first kid, and there was no handbook handed to us, and then let alone all the problems that come along in life, and especially this curveball that's thrown at you,
Right.
and
Nobody's
you don't
expecting
know
that,
what to
no.
do, and you want to protect your kid. That's the only thing we do. And anybody out there listening, when you're enabling your kid, and kind of what you're doing out there, and you're really protecting your kid. But if you think about it and you really sit down and think it through, you're really hurting them, because and I'm not saying that but I'm just saying out there, when we enable it, I was doing the same thing.
Well, there's always things I wish if I
Right.
look back, I would rather have
Of course,
done. And
yeah.
her father and I, we were no longer married, but it took us a little while to be on the same page and to come together. That was probably one of the most important things, is we were working as a team.
Yes.
and we're talking to each other about everything that was going on, because she tried to use one against the other for a little bit. But there's this great study that's just come out of the University of Texas Tech that's still going on, and they're doing functional MRI testing on the parents' brains. So now we know that when somebody has a craving, there's a part of the brain that lights up. We can actually see it.
Right.
But now they're doing this functional MRIs on parents when they're presented with the idea of getting a loved one or a child into, not necessarily parents, but loved ones, getting someone into treatment. The same part of the brain lights up that lights up when someone has a craving.
Yeah. Well,
And that's, I think, what it feels like. I mean, you become like, I know I'm doing the wrong thing, but I have to do it. So they're doing, this is a continuing study. The doctors' names are Shumway and Bradshaw. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this goes, because I think that we all know as parents what it feels like to feel like we have to do this thing that we know we shouldn't do, but we have to do. This is the exception. I have to do it anyway, you know. And I think that there was lots of times when I did stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we know there's so many people out there that don't have a good night's sleep until their child or loved one is in treatment and they're in a safe spot.
Or jail.
Or jail. Yeah.
Exactly. And, you know, the
Yeah.
jails, I worked in the jail back in the 70s when I first got out of the service. And, you know, they've changed. I've worked in the jail most recently, too. I was the EAP for the Billerica House of Correction, Middlesex County, for 3.5 years. And, you know, the sheriff out there, Peter Katusian, he's changed. He's changing with the times. He has a program for
It's
addicts, right?
right.
Because 99% of the people in jail are there because of the direct use and abuse of alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
No
Right.
questions asked. That's what it's about.
Yep, absolutely. So I taught in jail for a short amount of time, and I found the same thing, you know. And also we're releasing people and without any place to go after jail, which is not going to help
Just setting
anybody.
them up for failure.
Yeah.
So part of what Magnolia does, the nonprofit does also, is to raise money for sober living.
Wow.
And I work with the Department of Corrections. We give out a lot of our scholarships. We have a very precise way. We don't give them to private people off the street. People can't call me for a scholarship. We give them out through mass health treatment centers, departments of corrections, and drug courts.
Wow.
And it's typically somebody who has absolutely no
Right.
financial resources. And if not for this scholarship, they'd be going to the street after working really hard on their recovery.
Right.
So, and that's, you know, not going to help anybody either.
I'll say one thing about getting old, and I'm the oldest person in the room here, and I'm usually the oldest person in a lot of rooms. But what I like about being where I'm at now is I've seen society change with changing. They have a long way to go, but with this opioid epidemic, you know, years ago, back in the 80s, Lowell was a city where it was just inundated with heroin addicts and drug houses, and, you know, hundreds of them, and they were shut down, and that was good. But then we got the fentanyl, and then we had all these kids dying these last 7-8 years. But it's starting to change. And when you just talked about your foundation, to me, it just warms my heart to know that there are people that get out of jail that have absolutely nothing. They have the clothes on their back and not even a dollar in their pocket. And how does anyone expect them to go forward and not go back to what they were doing? That's exactly where they're going to go. So there is hope, and it's really good to see that. And hopefully in another 5-6 years, we're going to be in a place where things will be getting
Well, yeah, and
Better. So.
yeah, and these jails are crammed with people that don't have a place to go, and now there's some hope out there with with your foundation, Maureen, and it's just a wonderful thing. It's just amazing. I've never heard that before, and I never thought that process through. You know, once you're in jail, you get out, you're rehabilitated, you're not going to do it again. That's not always, probably 99% not necessarily the problem. It's kind of like when you get out of treatment, when they leave Genesis House. There's a plan set up for them. There's aftercare. There's AA. There's, so I'm sure, jail is no different than going to a treatment center, except for you did something wrong.
Because a lot of people walk into that state-funded treatment center in Massachusetts, which is what we work with, and they walk in literally with the clothes on their back.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, my daughter's thing was she always lost her shoes.
Right.
So she would have clothes on her back and
no shoes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think she had us. And we had insurance too. So she was in a much better position than 9 out of 10 people. But that's what I said. I'm kind of a person that sees gaps, and I saw the gap there,
Yeah.
and thought, well, you know what? If we're going to raise money, we should be raising money for people in that situation, because some people work so hard,
Oh, yeah.
and the light's gone off, and everybody can see it,
Yeah.
and they know that they're going to do it this time, and then they walk out the door and they have the clothes on their back and nowhere to live.
Yeah.
And come on, how
Yeah.
do we? I mean, it can still be done, but it's so much harder.
Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely. Well, I watched this podcast called Collateral Damage, and you sound like somebody that is on that. And Sweets, you sound like that person too.
I do.
Is there is that your brother and your sister, or is that
No,
something you guys want to reveal something there?
Yeah, well, we have a show called Collateral Damage.
Oh, you do?
Maureen and I,
Yeah.
we talk a lot about very similar topics.
Yep.
Our guests are very similar, and the idea is, there's a lot of collateral damage that happens within the family system, and there's a lot of, to your point, there's no handbook. So I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are dealing with something that, they have no reason to know how to deal with. They use all of their regular parenting skills, and then they find that those fall short.
Mm-hmm.
Because regular parenting doesn't apply when it comes to addiction. You get desperate, you get emotional, and you start to do things like you said, Maureen, outside of your normal comfort zone. You're getting desperate. You're running around with bats looking to kill people. And,
and that wasn't even the craziest thing I did.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. It's just a great way to start a book, though. But when you
great way to start a podcast.
Yeah, and when you run into that, you need somebody else to step in and give you better tools.
Certainly.
And that's what Maureen's consulting service does, and that's what so many different agencies do. Is that now they're focusing on the family, whereas for years the primary focus was on that individual and getting them well so they could come back and just relive their life. But families get sick with the individual.
Absolutely.
And so, on our podcast, we like to talk about the same topic and educate those parents and family members and give them new tools.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've had mothers and fathers that have actually put their children on allowances like $60 a day so they could get two 30s, two 30 milligram Percocets or whatever they were using, and that was the best they could do. And I'm not knocking them at all. I applaud them trying, but just think of that. Think of how sick you have to be, and I had another guy who'd go buy the drugs because his son had been arrested so many times in that area. He didn't want his son to be arrested again.
Yep.
Well, let me tell you this. So my friend's mother used to do that for us. My friend Jimmy and I, we were living in his garage, and we were doing Oxy 80s. This is back in early 2000s. And, she, old school Greek, had absolutely no idea what we were doing. She just knew that when we were sick, he couldn't go to work and he couldn't function. And so she came out to the garage one day when he didn't show up at the family restaurant, and she's like, "What's wrong with you?" And we said, "We're sick." And she goes, "Sick from drugs?" And we were like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Well, how much money do you need for the drugs so that you're not sick?" And we told her, we were like, "We need $120 so we can go get 2 pills." And she said, all right, and she left $120 on the kitchen table. Right. And we got the pills, and he went to work.
Happy
and I
days
went off and did my
again.
thing. And then so every morning, she would leave $120 on the kitchen table for us, and it
Right.
was just this kind of unspoken thing of like, well, if that's what you need to function, then I'll just give it to you because I'd rather have you at work functioning than sitting in the garage like a drug addict. And so in her mind, it was, as long as you can get up and go to work, you're not an addict. And it was just old school thinking.
Sure.
But she brought what she had to the table, and that's the best she could do.
That's what she knew. And as crazy as it sounds, that's what we're forced to do. They say alcohol and drugs take us to places we don't want to be, doing things we don't want to do with people we don't want to be with. And, I can relate. We can all relate. And what a remarkable presence you have now. And I mean, to get where you are at now, Maureen, I mean, you've been through a lot of pain and suffering, I'm sure. But if you could go back in time, which I'm sure it's a painful place.
To the painful place. Okay, I was going back to like the womb.
Back to like 18,
That's
19.
comfortable. Yeah, I bet you wanted to go back to the womb a few times. I know I did.
Yeah.
But if you could go back, what is there anything you would have done differently? Something that would be tangible, something that people could grasp right now and say, well, I'm going to use this.
And maybe not go that way.
It's funny because I asked my daughter, did I do it? What did I do wrong? What did I do right? Because thank God I'm able to do that because she's still with me, you know. And let's face it, this was this was luck, is all it was, because she probably overdosed 30 times. Wow. So there's no understanding why some people make it and some people don't. Because,
no rhyme or reason.
Right.
No.
There's no rhyme or reason. I didn't do anything differently. I don't have any magic answer or anything like that. And I work with families now. So part of what I do is I'm a family recovery coach, and I meet with families, and I have an office in North Reading. I do it online. I have clients all over the country. People that, like me, that just needed somebody to help them guide them through through this mess. Right. And I wish I had that. I wish I had somebody to go to for questions. Right. My daughter tells me the things that I did right was that I was always there and calm. And believe it or not, I really was calm. Even when I was going to kill somebody, I was calm.
You were calm, right.
It's an amazing ability. Right. And that she always knew that I loved her. Right. Because I am not one of those tough love people that you think you cut somebody off and you don't talk to them and get back to me when you're 6 months sober. Right. I mean, I think that's horrifying, actually. And I think I've never been, I've seen lots of people lose their children. Right. And I've seen people that had that approach lose their children, and those are that's got to be the worst feeling
Absolutely.
in the whole world.
Because it's almost like you're throwing in the towel when you say, come
Right.
back to me. You're giving them no tools at all, no direction. Just come back to me when you're sober. God Almighty, that's a
And
horrible
I know
existence.
people that are afraid of their own children, and they have right to be.
Right.
And
Oh, I've
and
seen
I'm
that
so
too.
I'm not encouraging families, if you're afraid of your child and if they're dangerous, to go invite them in the house and into their old bedroom. I'm not encouraging that at
Right,
all.
right.
But you can always tell somebody you love them, even if you can't be with them, even if you can't physically be with them. You can let them know that they're loved, because
Love them from a distance.
absolutely,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
whatever works in that family, and every family is different. I don't know what I would have done differently, to tell you the truth, because as horrible as this was, wonderful things came out of it.
Of course.
The nonprofit came out of it. I was a special education teacher before this. I wound up creating a whole business and a whole a nonprofit and the support groups and counseling that helps lots and lots of people. My daughter, on the other side of this, after 2.5 years, she got on the Vivitrol shot, did an amazing amount of work on herself to figure out how she got there, why she stayed there, and how not to go back. Work, and that created a safety net, for her to be able to do that work. And on the other side of this, she's the most amazing person I know. So I don't know.
I like what you said about being calm. Being calm through situations always helps things out. Even in the worst of situations, like you said, I was gonna go kill this guy, and you were calm. And but you didn't, and you thought it through somewhere down the road. But when you get in that rage or you get crazy and you don't calm down, if you went to kill that guy and you succeeded or you beat the shit out of him, you wouldn't be sitting here. You might be in jail. I mean, that's what could happen.
No, you're right.
But it's I ended up doing an intervention on my daughter, me, my wife, my ex-wife, my one of my daughters. We went down to Florida. She was in Florida, and this intervention got really heated. And I completely forgot about this until you said something. Her boyfriend, who was doing not the same thing, but just keeping her high and all that, ends up showing up at the intervention with drugs for her in her car with an open can of beer. And I ran over there, and I was not calm. And I ended up screaming and yelling. My brother-in-law carries a gun. I'm like, Greg, give me that fucking gun. Give me that gun. And Greg's like, whoa. And the interventionist is like, listen, Eddie. He goes, this is not about you. This is about your daughter and getting her. So that's when I realized that calm needed to be set in place. And once we all calmed down and we got him out of there, and it went the right way.
Yeah,
so I applaud you for staying calm. I think you did everything right the way.
I was not always calm. I was calm in front of her.
Well, that's exactly, yeah.
And and now I feel like I'm able to help parents get to that point where they're able to do things like that, not just from my own experiences, but all of the trainings I've spent the last couple of years taking. Most importantly, I think is the training that Sweets provides.
Wow.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy.
Thank you for that plug.
No, but it's true. I mean, I've done lots and lots of trainings, and that intervention training, I've done several intervention trainings, and that intervention training was the most meaningful, because a lot of the things that are going on right now, even the trainings and what little there is, I'm creating a family recovery coaching curriculum and training so that I can train both social workers and just families with lived experience in what they should know,
Right.
and even to whether it's to deal with a family member or to in their practice, because we can't expect people that haven't been through this to understand what it's like to
Correct.
go through this.
It's like speaking a foreign language.
Absolutely. But a lot of these the programs that have been written were written 20-25 years ago,
Right.
and it's not the same world anymore, unfortunately.
Right.
I mean,
Nothing in this
Nothing
treatment
compares.
field is different now. Is all different now. Sweets, if you don't mind, what was that training? I just, for the listeners and just a curiosity, maybe somebody listening out there can.
Yeah, so about
benefit from
a year ago, I took the liberty of creating an intervention training program. As Maureen said, there's a lot of programs out there that, they're based on recycled information. So instead of just taking one and adopting it, I took one and I created it from the ground up. And it was more focused on the family systems and, a lot of the stuff that Maureen does now. And the idea, of course, is to try to train interventionists to be a little bit more sensitive of the family system and focused on the big picture instead of just getting someone through the door of treatment. You know, you are you're a champion for change when you're sitting there with a family. You talked about being calm. You know, when an interventionist comes in and they seem like not only do they know what they're doing, not only do they seem like they're going to get your loved one into treatment, but they're invested in your family system and changing the long-term outcomes, you can have confidence in that person, and you actually can find that you're a little bit more calm. You have hope. You have belief that things are going to change.
Certainly. And
the family system is more willing to take your advice and direction. So that certified family-focused intervention model is what we created over at Bay State. And, we've been doing that. We've got about 60 students in the last year. And, the idea is to change the way that those people on the front lines are addressing this issue. And Maureen is a perfect example. She's one of the very few that I decided to bring in and actually work with me and participate in interventions, and she's done great.
Right.
It's been in that piece about, it's not over when they go into treatment. Now it's the time for the family to come together and start working on themselves, because this is a family disease. It affects everybody, brings the whole family down. And what happens is untrained and uneducated, and I don't mean, I mean educated in this. Your loved one can go to treatment and then come home, and you will mess them up in 30 seconds. You could bring them right back to where they were before. And you do this with love, and you don't understand what you're doing. So this is not something we innately know how to do, So I think that, that's another gap,
Well, I think the big misnomer is a lot of addicts and alcoholics, they believe they're only hurting themselves. They don't realize, they think they're only hurting themselves because they're in so much pain.
Right.
They're in so much turmoil. Their life is just upside down, and they think, hey, I'm just hurting myself. They have no idea. And I was an alcoholic, and I am an alcoholic and drug addict, and I didn't realize the pain I was bringing to my family. I did not know. But then as a father and as a recovery, a specialist and a therapist and everything, I see it now. And you're so right about, someone said about 25 years ago how it was different. Exactly. And you can't just keep regurgitating stuff that was written 25 years ago. No. With this opioid and fentanyl epidemic is entirely different. It is part of addiction, but it's a huge addiction. It's not. You're talking death, instant death sometimes.
Yeah, quick, too. It's not like you don't have 15 years of Uncle Joe drinking too much, and now we have to talk to him. It's not the same thing.
Amen. Absolutely. Sweets, when I met you 10 years ago, that was your philosophy when you started, was give it 8 years ago, whatever it was, when you started your interventions. And I called upon you to do an intervention for me. And, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I was used to the interventionist calling the person on the phone, meeting them the next day, and doing the intervention. You were like, well, I'm going to have to meet with the family. I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about? Meet with the family? Are you out of your mind? Get this shit done. Get this kid into treatment. But you were kind of a pioneer in that. And, that is so true now. And that's almost the standard that we need to work with these families. Get these families. John Kelly, who I always bring up on the show, he was another one with the families. He kind of forged me that way, but you kind of set it in stone when I met you, and I kind of understood all that like Maureen said, once the families come back, once they come back into the families, they can fuck things up again. There's times in Genesis House we won't let the families talk to the client because they can undo everything that the therapist did in a month in 5 minutes. So,
it's a sick tree, sick forest. You know what I mean? You take a sick tree out of a sick forest and you get the little tree well and you put it back in a sick forest, they get sick. The philosophy I've had from the beginning is that you can't, as an interventionist or as a professional, as anybody in this industry that's working with addicts and alcoholics and addiction and recovery, is that you can't be led by the fear and desperation and emotion of the family to rush in and do something that takes time. You're talking about something that's taken months, years, possibly decades to manifest itself into what it is today. And if you're going to step in and you hope to affect any real change whatsoever, then as a professional, it's your responsibility to take the time, A, to do it right, and then B, not to be led by the family's fear and desperation to overreact or overreach.
Absolutely.
And that's hard to do, especially when the family is like, I want it done now, or another professional saying, you need to do it tomorrow. And then as a professional, you have to step back and say, if you want me to do it right, I have to slow it down.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing worse than going to a wake or a funeral, and as you're standing in line or going through the line, and the family members will say, who is that? Or who is that? And the family member will say, that's the therapist Johnny was seeing or Julie was seeing. And you don't know how low you feel because you feel so responsible, even though you might have nothing to do with it at all.
I felt that.
You know what I'm saying?
It's awful.
And it's an awful place to be.
Right.
And the anxiety and panic I got going to a couple of wakes was just insurmountable. And I really had to put myself together to make myself walk in knowing that that's possibly going to happen.
And the difference is if you did it right, you can walk through that line,
right.
you can shake the hand, you
Correct.
can look them in the eyes knowing you did everything you
That's right.
possibly could and
That's
that you did it the right way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why if anybody says they have the answer, every answer is different for every family.
Absolutely.
And whatever their answer is, I always feel like you have to do it from a place of love, because everybody's angry, everybody's tired. You can't affect change, or you can't handle this problem with those emotions.
No.
You have to do everything from a place of love.
Absolutely.
Let the person know that they're loved, and I know that you believe the same thing. And that's how your interventions are done. But it's got to all be from a place of love, so that if anything happens, and I can say this to parents because I know what it feels like to know that the only time I knew she was alive was when she was on the phone with me or in front of me, because she was overdosing so much that I never knew from day to day, and I had to be able to live with myself and whatever I did or said, and I think that's what kept me calm, because I mean, not that I was not internally calm, but calm and loving with her, because yelling at somebody and screaming at somebody and threatening them and being angry with them has never helped.
Nope.
It just doesn't
It's only going to hinder.
It's just going to make you feel like, oh my God, what did I do if I do lose this person? Because this is a potentially fatal disease.
Oh yeah. It's definitely. I mean, not too many people survive it now. Like you were saying before, with the heroin and everything. We used to try to drink ourselves to death, but that took a long time. You get some fentanyl and you're done. And what you can use one time and you can die. And there, this is but going back to the family thing. Now the families nowadays have more support. They have more. When my son went to treatment 13 years ago, the support wasn't there. I didn't know what to do. He got out of treatment and, IOP, and that was it. But there's so much support now because we understand all this, and people like you, Maureen, had to go through what you went through. Mike and I, what we went through. Mike, you, Sweets, you developing programs for people to understand what, there is a difference, by families getting well. And John Kelly, same thing, him developing that family system. There's always a family system support out there, but now we have that support to get into to kind of understand, like just the addict coming out of treatment. They got that support. They go to IP, blah blah blah. Now, what do the families do? We have people like you guys now, like Sweets and Maureen, that we can go see and understand and kind of work our ways through. So, Maureen, real quick, we're going to have to close here in a minute, but how can everybody get a hold of you? Facebook, all that good stuff. I know all in show notes, but give us some...
Either through the nonprofit MagnoliaNewBeginnings.org, or I have on my website, Maureen Cavanagh, CAVANAGH.net. They can get in touch with me through there. And my phone number's on there, my email address.
And one more time, the name of your book, the full name?
It's If You Love Me, A Mother's Journey Through Her Daughter's Opioid Addiction.
Yeah.
Maureen Cavanagh, what an incredible,
unbelievable story.
Yes, you've been.
Yeah.
Been
you know
great.
what? Can I just add one thing?
You can add 5 things if you want.
If anybody reads the book, like I said, it's funny. It's full of hope. And when it ended, she had 3 days out of her last treatment center. There's many other people's stories, because I work with lots of young people. Their stories in there. Everybody in that book is in recovery right now. So it does happen.
That's great.
Don't lose hope. And recovery happens. It's possible.
And the families can recover. If the loved one doesn't recover, we can recover, and we have to live our lives too. And that's something I'm sure you look down like, okay, I need to recover, even if she's not going to recover, because sometimes they're not going to recover, unfortunately. So, but anyways, that was a great show, and thank you, Maureen. Thank you for being a guest, coming to the studio. Really appreciate it.
FriendsInRecoveryPodcast.com. Maureen Cavanagh, thank you so much.
Stay sober, everybody.
That concludes this episode of Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast. Thanks to Genesis House for supporting those on the path to recovery and for keeping this valuable resource free for our Friends in Recovery community. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, email us at help@friendsinrecoverypodcast.com. If you can't get enough of Mike the Podfather and Jersey Ed, you can catch them on Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast, available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube.